Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day two in the 29th International Conference of Management of Technology, Industry X.0, the digital world. Today, we have been started the day with a number of papers, and yesterday it was day one, where we had our keynote speech by Dr. Namat Shafiq, and we had the session, a panel discussion about the global lessons from the
I
crisis
can't
in
open
2020.
my video.
Today, the session is going to cover the topic about the management of technology in the post-digital world. And I leave the microphone to Professor Khalil to start introducing the panel. Professor Khalil, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Nizar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I think we are straddling the globe. So I am pleased that you have joined us for this very important seminar. Our speaker and panel chair is Dr. Anton Botha, who is a physicist and a strategist and a future thinker. He runs Technoscene, a company that he founded in 1989. He consults a lot in the realms of science, engineering, technology, and innovation, and spends a lot of his time imagining the future. That's what we need right now. We need to create images. He actually creates images for clients of what is it to be. He sees knowledge as the new currency and constantly seek for understanding how we will live, work, play, and transact in the future. He is part-time academic at the Graduate School of Technology Management at the University of Pretoria and extraordinary professor in the Department of Industrial Engineering at Stellenbosch University. He's also an IAMOT board member. I'm very pleased that he actually organized this panel, and I will invite him to present the panelists, or if he wishes, I can present them later. Anton, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you very much, Professor Khalil, for the introduction, and good afternoon, or good day, I should say, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. And we hope to have a very good discussion today. As a panel, it's going to be slightly different than most panel sessions, and I'll explain to you how we're going to approach it. But let me first then go back to Professor Tarek Khalil and introduce him. He has not done it. I'm going to be very short. The longer versions of the bios are in the document that you all have. Professor Khalil is the president of the Nile University. He's the founding president, the provost, and the dean of the Graduate School of Management of Technology of the Nile University in Egypt. He is the founder of the International Association for Management of Technology, IAMOT, and he has chaired more than 20 of its international conferences worldwide. Thank you for agreeing to be on the panel. We will need your institutional memory, but also your vision in terms of where we want to take management of technology as a discipline. Then there's Professor David Bennett. David, if you could just wave to them. He was Professor of Technology Management at Aston University in Birmingham in the UK until about 2011, and then he retired and he became a visiting professor at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. But he's also still an emeritus professor at Aston. He is also a founding member of IAMOT, also with an institutional memory and also with a good foresight and vision of where we can go as a group of people that have a passion about technology management. Professor Roland Ort. Roland, if you could wave. to everybody. He's Associate Professor of Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. He's in the Faculty of Technology Policy and Management. He's the Research Dean of the European Network of Researchers on Technology and Innovation Management. He's also a board member, but also of the ICE network. And then lastly, Professor Geeta Suri. Geeta, if you can wave from the US. She's Professor of Strategy and Innovation and Director of the Elizabeth and Ellen Don Center for Innovative Technologies and Decision Sciences at Adelphi University in New York. She's also a Senior Fellow at the Mack Institute of Innovation in the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She is also an IAMOT board member, and I've had many discussions with her in the past on where we should be going. What are we going to do? First of all, I'm very grateful to the organizers that they allowed me to actually present the paper that I submitted as an intro to this discussion, paper 160. So this is the only place where you will find a presentation of that. I'm just going to extract a few things, a few thinking frameworks, I should say, that will take us forward in terms of where should we be as a community in the so-called post-digital age. But I'll explain what the post-digital age is, that we can think around that. Then I'm going to ask the panelists to each give us a 5-minute overview of what they think. They can either criticize what I say, they can expand on what I say, they can come with their own opinion. It's a very wide and open discussion. Nothing is holy or sacred. We can, as we say, we can throw a stone in the bush and see what jumps out. Where I live in Africa, that's a dangerous thing to throw a stone in a bush, because what jumps out may be bigger than yourself. And then I'm going to ask all of you to come with contributions, your thinking, if you have questions, if you have suggestions. But just to record it, please, if you could do this on the Q&A facility that we have in Zoom, we will then go back to that. And if you are still in the audience, we will give you an opportunity. You should just raise your hand, making use of the feature we have on this tool. And we will give you an opportunity to then make a statement. Please, when you make that statement, don't do a presentation for us. Our time is very limited. We've lost some time switching on. So what I normally say is follow the 30-second rule. Say what you want to say in 30 seconds and let somebody else take it from there. So I'll appreciate it if you can stick to this protocol. And then I will hand back to Nazar, and they will go through the formalities in terms of taking pictures and so on. So that is roughly what we're going to do this afternoon. I'm now going to share my screen with you and quickly take you through a framework to just orientate us in our discussion. I hope you can see it because I've got it on a split screen here. David, can you see it properly on that side? Just give me an indication. Thank you. We are going to talk about what's going to happen to our discipline in a post-digital world. Now, you will see that our conference is towards the digital world. So we are not considering that we are there yet. So what is this post-digital world? But the purpose of this whole discussion is to create a platform for debate in the technology management fraternity in its broadest sense, and to think out of the box and review our discipline and its foundations. Now, normally when you start addressing foundations, it may become very emotional, it may become very personal. When we address foundations, we don't do it to shake things just for the cause of shaking it, but to see if we can improve the foundations and make it stronger. And our guiding question in this debate is, can we develop a new definition for management of technology that will be acceptable to an extended foundation for the discipline and make it more dynamic to allow less stagnation of the definition? So I almost imply that our definition as we have it, and I'll show you what it is, has stagnated. I may be wrong, and that's up to you to point out to me. So what is this post-digital world? Well, first of all, the world will never go post-digital without staying digital. With that, we say it's not something after digital. It's actually something after what digital has brought us and is still supporting. So how do we operate in that era? And then we have to keep in mind that digital is only the right of admission into this post-digital world, because you cannot be there if you have not gone through the digital phase. The turning point towards the post-digital world is to innovate and differentiate, to go beyond the foundational adoption of digital infrastructure, tools, and concepts. So it's beyond digitalization that we speak about. It's beyond having that capability that we say we all need in the fourth industrial revolution. And the emphasis is very much on momentary markets. And you will see that also refers back to our thinking and our understanding of what the issues are in the fourth industrial revolution. This is where individualization and instant on-demand design, for example, fabrication and delivery, will become very close to each other, and those things will be the norm. And every moment will represent a potential new market of one. Someone explained to me, and that's still the best understanding I have of the 4IR, is that it is the environment where we will make one product which is customized for one user at a cheaper price than we do it in the typical volume production of economy of scale. So we look at the relationship between business and society and how this is being changed fundamentally. And what we're saying here, we're already alluding to the fact that it's not only about the organization, the enterprise, the company, but society becomes very important when we talk about management of technology. So the post-digital era originates from business reaching completion of their digital transformation in the fourth industrial revolution. And we cannot look at the fourth industrial revolution as something into the future. It is here with us. We see it in the talks that we get in this IAMOT conference. People are talking about practicalities of actually operating in it and not only preparing for it should it come one day. So ultimately, the post-digital era will be one where digitalization will be used to disrupt disruption. And I think we are living in an era where we actually see this kind of disrupting of disruption, because a large amount of what we've been preparing for in disruption was for a 4IR where we could step in our own time. And then suddenly came COVID-19 and disrupted this environment that's already disrupted. And we had to start thinking differently, and many of our discussions that we had yesterday actually pointed out that we are in a global change. We are in a new world, and we have to think differently. All right. So how should MOT be reformed to support business in the post-digital age? People will first of all have to make sense of both the digital, the cyber part, and the physical world, the cyber physical world. And we're learning very, very fast also in terms of the COVID context. Many digital technologies are now in an advanced state. People with mid-level skills can master many of these technologies. And there is, to a large extent, maturity in digital applications. So the digital society is now a hyper-connected society with digital devices and algorithms that dictate our living, our transacting, our playing, and our learning. So MOT must be ready for a new generation emerging from these digital societies. And I think this is very important to understand, that it is a new generation that we talk about. Younger people, people that think differently, people that are sitting within our organization and that should come in and give us the ideas of where we should be going with the discipline. So one cannot think of MOT in the context of a firm only anymore, but it's an ecosystem. Now that ecosystem encapsulates markets and products and services, technologies and processes, people and knowledge, and it has a strong time dependency. And I think this is the thing that we might have neglected in the way we look at the discipline, is that strong time dependency is not an integral part of our model. it is something that we recognize that things are moving forward, but to what extent is it an integral part of our model? But how do we look at MOT at the moment? Well, we've got an existing definition that we in IAMOT subscribe to a large extent, and it comes from this document in 1987 by the US Department of Commerce, Management of Technology, the Hidden Competitive Advantage. And I'm going to draw a picture as I'm reading the definition. It says, management of technology links engineering, science, and I've added including social and behavioral sciences, and management disciplines to plan, develop, and implement technological capabilities to shape and accomplish the strategic and operational objectives of an organization. And this is what we're asking ourselves today. Is this still the definition that applies to this post-digital world that we are moving into? Well, first of all, this was now interpreted over the last 30 years or so to make the technology enterprise more competitive. And that's right, and it should still be. The focus is really on technology strategy, and you will see what came after that definition is that many of the courses that we started presenting all over the world and many of the textbooks that we wrote had a strategic view on technology management. There's a distinction between industrial management and technology management, and that came out through the evolution of technology management as well. So there's still an engineering part that's very strong and should stay there. There's also recognition to the understanding of human beings involved within the technology environment, and that was embedded in our original understanding of science, which included the human sciences, behavioral sciences, the soft sciences, as we like to call it in engineering. And out of that came a knowledge base, the Book of Knowledge, which basically started to record the MOT-centered knowledge, the knowledge of corporate functions, the knowledge of supporting disciplines, special requirements for education, technology-centered knowledge. And this is to a large extent the framework from which we operate in IAMOT today, and which we use in our teaching, in our thinking, in our consulting. But people now look at this, especially younger people, and they say, if I look back at history, the era 1982 to 1992, when MOT really started to peak and get its heydays, was about modernizing production. The era from 92 to 2002 was about deploying and integrating information systems, automation, 3IR. The era from 2002 to 2012 was to innovate and optimize the life cycle of our products and our technologies. And what I add from 2012 to 2020 is we are now preparing the enterprise for fast change. So this is what we've been doing generically in MOT. Well, Tarek in his textbook that saw the light around 2005, 2006, started to talk about technology, because we cannot work with management of technology unless we understand technology. And he said it includes all knowledge, products, processes, tools, methods and systems employed in the creation of goods and in providing services. And he started talking about wealth creation, which is not only about money, but about well-being as well. Rias van Wyk, another colleague and founding member of the whole field of MOT, in his recent book, Technology, Its Fundamental Nature, speaks about this definition. He says technology is functionality created by people and expressed by devices, procedures, and human skill. If I take that functionality issue further, and I say we can get an MOT space by looking at what sits between the market, the product or the service, the technology process, or people and their knowledge, we can say people are customers, people are producers, people are creators, and people are knowledge custodians. But between what people want and what the product or the service supply, there's a functionality. And that functionality is integral to our technology definition. That functionality we translate into human-centered design, so our technology is focused on the human, and that to a large extent we've now taken to individualization. But there's now a new word in the market, there's a new association in the market, and that is called a life world. That is it's the exposure I have to technology right through my life. Think about your relationship with your smartphone. So it's a whole ecological change, it's not a technological change anymore. And what we're now saying is there's a social, cultural, virtual association where products live and morph with the customer over time. Time. We haven't got time in our thinking. We haven't got time in our definition. So let's add a fifth dimension to the MOT space. Let's make time integral to markets, products, services, technologies, and knowledge. If we do that, we actually have not a tetrahedron, but we have something looking like that, excuse me, which we call a pyramid. And where is it better to talk about pyramids than in this virtual association we have with Cairo? And since this conference is in Cairo, I think we can use this as a metaphor to think of MOT, where we now have different points, different dimensions, where we can describe, and I'm not going through all of this, you can look at it in the paper, but you can look at the relationship between markets, products, and technology, or you can look at the relationship between time, products, and knowledge, or you can say, but technology management is about how products and technology change over time, or it is about how markets, through the knowledge that people have, necessitate new technologies to be developed. So instead of having that single line, we still maintain some of the elements. And this is my thought model that I propose, that MOT is now almost a circular thing where we still say it's about bringing the disciplines of science, engineering, and management together. We still strategize at enterprise level where we develop and implement what we need to actually grow the technology firm to a competitive basis. But now we add the life world concept where we say there's human and benefit from technology and time. And that is the life world. So the market drives the life world, the enterprise is around where we practice technology, and the physical world is the world based on our disciplines that go into MOT. And these things obviously interface with each other. And when we talk about how the firm and the life worlds talk to each other, it's about individualized dynamic solutions and value addition on different types of value chains. Between the market and the physical, there's a lot of learning by understanding the market needs. And between using our disciplines and actually creating our enterprises, it's creating that cyber aspect of the cyber physical world, where there's augmented intelligence integration into our businesses. So if you want to put that into words, a new concept looking from inside that circle out, MOT is now the integration of broader disciplines of science, engineering, and management to enable the technology firm through augmented intelligence to strategize, develop technology, and implement it in individualized dynamic solutions that create life worlds for humans that provide dynamic benefits over time. Knowledge gained by interfacing with the life worlds provide growth in the body of knowledge of MOT. It's difficult to understand. On the outside in, and this is how our clients should see it, it should be straightforward and it should be linking with the language that we also have in the 4IR context. And that is that MOT enables cyber-physical solutions for the enterprise to add value to the market and be sustainable through continuous learning. So my premise here that we can start our discussion on is that we bring in time, we recognize people, we move away from just the enterprise, the firm, to the society, the social aspect, the human aspect. Three questions that I want us to concentrate the rest of our discussion on, and also the panel members. Is the existing MOT definition still valid? I've tried to argue no, it isn't, but I may be wrong. Are the suggested thought models that I came up with here appropriate? I'm sure they can be improved. And if the definition of MOT should be reviewed, who should take responsibility for that? Thank you. That is what I wanted to put down as just a broad framework for our discussions. I'm going to stop my sharing now, and I'm going to ask David to take the discussion from here and to also reflect on what I've suggested. David, you're still muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. Well, there you are. First rule of technology is learn how the system works. Okay, I hope everybody can hear me now. Thanks, Anton. I'm going to share my screen. I haven't got a presentation as such because we were instructed by our chairman not to really make one. But let me just, can you see that?
Yes.
Let me, I think you can probably see, no, you can see my, you could actually, what you could see.
We saw it earlier.
Yeah, but what you could see was actually a PowerPoint. No, what you could see was actually that was a PDF. I need a PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Not yet, David.
Okay. I'm trying to even get back to Zoom now.
We still see you, so the camera is still on.
Okay. Well, let's skip the presentation. I'll try to come back to the couple of slides later on. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation, Anton. It's good to be in Cairo for the third time, although not there in practice. First of all, I think I need to say that what I think what everybody's got to say probably has a link to a lot of the other panels and keynotes at the conference, especially what we've heard so far and what I've seen from the program. I had 5 observations and thoughts to do with this particular presentation. The first one relates to the inclusion or the focus on the human element. My thought there really is that we're not really talking about anything new. We can go back to 1857 it was, when I've got his name written down in phonetics, so it's Polish. Wojciech Jastrzębowski wrote this paper on ergonomics. And of course, we've got a lot of work that was done in the First World War on human factors, also during the Second World War on man-machine systems, anthropometry, to train pilots, to train people to work radar and so on. So there's been a lot going on. Cranfield University, if you can see this, in about 1964, came up with something called the Cranfield Man. What they did was to look at the typical turret lathe and what the ideal operator would be to actually operate that lathe. So as you can see, the person, in fact, you can see their height, their shoulder width, and their arm width. So, you know, clearly what we need to do is to look at how we can actually design machines more effectively to fit workers. Maybe we should be talking about an IAMOT person in connection with the digital world as well. How many arms does the person today need? How many eyes do they need to, in fact, work a computer, an iPhone, an iPad, and so on, almost simultaneously? I know I've got repetitive strain injury in my 2 index fingers through the way in which I simply work my smartphone. The second point I wanted to make relates to the model itself. And you've quite rightly, as is needed, used a multidimensional model. Just a quick comment there that I've used models that have gone beyond 2 dimensions in my own research and teaching in the past in production systems design. They're very useful when you're doing research and when you're explaining to people in seminars. Certainly if you go into a teaching situation, I find that people's eyes rather glaze over, and that could be a problem in terms of the way in which the new model is articulated. The next thing I wanted to say really was to re-emphasize what you said about post-digital. Post-digital doesn't mean that digital is finished. What it does mean is that it no longer dominates MOT, but really it just becomes embedded. It becomes a natural part of our daily lives, so that other factors such as the human element, of course, become more important. You're using the term post-digital world. I don't think using that is necessarily very helpful. Certainly, one's immediate impression is that when you say post-digital, you think that digital is gone, but we still use stones, even though it's no longer the Stone Age. We'll still use bronze and iron, even though it's no longer the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. So these things will remain. So I think maybe we need to think about some sort of terminology that we can use. Then the next point I wanted to make was to do with the time scale. Well, when did the modern digital world start? I would say it was 1947, not just because that's the year I was born, but also because it was the year that the first modern computer was invented. Also, the ACM was formed, the transistor was developed, Hewlett-Packard was incorporated, and also Alan Turing started his ideas of intelligent machinery. These are all things that happened in 1947. And then the next point I want to make is that MOT certainly goes beyond this idea of industry. And just a comment, Anton, is that you still use the word firm in your definition, and I would query that. Certainly there are other definitions which include the word service, as you mentioned. Rias's definition of technology is quite useful, but on the other hand, it only says what technology is. It doesn't say what it's for and how it can be used and what the different applications are. So I've come up with a term which, if it ever catches on, I shall claim I invented, called societal technological ecosystems. I think that's really what we should be looking at in the post-digital world. The list of things I've got down, just scribbled down here, are things like health, leisure, sport, recreation, media, education, scientific research, publication, public and personal transportation, government, safety, security, food, pharma, retail, supply chains, environment, ecology, sustainability. These are things that are to do with our daily lives that aren't necessarily captured by the traditional MOT model. And then the last thing, the fifth point, is to do with time, which is the important dimension in the MOT model that you mentioned. And I think time is also related to difference in countries. Some of the slides I was going to show, we're going to investigate some of the country differences, the rankings in terms of digital competitiveness and digital application, and the rankings that have been done by IMD and various organizations that indicate the level of development that countries have in terms of both how they innovate their technology and also how they apply their technology.
David, thank you. We have to move on, unfortunately.
Just my very last point then relates to this question of the digital divide, because I think that when we're talking about countries, this is something that somebody mentioned yesterday. I do note, I found out that actually 93% of the world's population is within reach of mobile broadband, but only 53% are actually using the internet. So I think with low-cost devices and so on, we can probably, as MOT academics and practitioners, help people to engage with the internet, because the infrastructure and the technology is there. It's just an application challenge that we've got to meet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Gita. Gita, are you still muted?
Okay, yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, well, Anton, thank you for inviting me to this really interesting seminar. I'm very excited about this new definition, and I really think that, yes, we have to look forward and think about how we can incorporate some of these new things. Not having had the long history that David has with IAMOT and with others, I also feel that we are at a new stage in terms of technology, and we need to kind of really revisit the definition. And I'm very, very excited about your definition, by the way. So I really like the concept of life worlds because it highlights the importance of human-centeredness. And while the human has always been affected, that's not something new, but I think the human is now at center stage, because if we say that digital technology is embedded in everything we do, and that individualized products and services or systems are going to, be the norm, then we need to really focus on human-centered design and incorporating more of the social sciences and humanities and understanding about behavior in management of technology. So this really brings out the question of what types of worlds do we want? And I think that in the past, if you think about where management of technology took most people in terms of their careers, you could be a CTO or you could be something, somebody who is sort of more technology oriented. But when we talk about life worlds and how it affects us in our everyday lives, then we have to think about what kinds of worlds we want. And digital technologies have the potential to construct experiences that appeal to our higher selves, or equally, we also need to consider how they may take advantage of or hijack our discrimination and decision-making capacity. So if you're tethered to your devices, or if you're looking at, you're creating life worlds, and that is what technologists do, we don't really consider the ethical aspects of it. So I would like to expand this, or offer that we need to think about expanding this definition, especially as you mentioned also that that management of technology now is more explicitly engaged in the business and society project, as I call it. So we're much more involved in how society operates. So we're thinking about ourselves as not just people who create technologies or manage technologies, but also as people who are designers, maybe architects or artists. So I know this might be a little bit, provocative, but I'm throwing this out there. So I like the emphasis on human-centeredness, but we also need to think about more about the ethical considerations. The second point I want to make is that continuous learning is now actually will, in this kind of a world, be par for the course. So it's critical for innovation, and as your paper mentioned, that innovation is basically the lifeblood of everything. It's sort of there in the background, and that knowledge is what the progress of knowledge and the discipline is what we're focusing on. So this highlights the need for collaboration in these networks or ecosystems, and information sharing is critical. So there has to be more emphasis on building capabilities to reflect on and learn from the technologies and the behavior and context. So my contention is that if this is the case, we need a huge shift in capabilities and the ability to perform meta-analyses, the ability to reflect, to have emotional intelligence. And this raises the question of what does it mean to be human with augmented intelligence? The third point I want to make is that the issue of time, where you have continuous development of strategy at the enterprise level. So with these worlds where you have everything moving along with the human cycle, and time becomes an explicit dimension here. So strategy development at the enterprise level will also be accelerated due to the disruptive nature of technologies and ever shortening product life cycles. So this is going to add to uncertainty and volatility. So we need to think about what kinds of decision-making processes can be adopted to address this. And my contention is that on the one hand, we have foresight, but we also need to be experimenting a lot more. So this thought that I have of options heuristics, you take an options approach to things, is a term that is borrowed from the financial world. So using options thinking to make decisions. Yes.
Peter, thank you. We need to wrap up now in terms of time. I'm just watching the program time. Now we had a 15-minute late start.
Okay, so one more minute. Yeah, one more minute. Sustainability, I think, is very critical. So I think we need to highlight the resilience of the network and talk about zero waste, etc. And the last point I want to make really is trust is critical when you have these cyber worlds where there's, individualized, individualized production at the point of sale involving user input. So there has to be greater vigilance on the part of the producer and consumer, more emphasis on standards and linkages in the network. So my contention here is that trust is something that we really need to think about, and governance of the system and the infrastructure for collaboration.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just check with the organizers in terms of the other session that's starting now soon? How much time do we have, and should we cut it here or can we carry on? Nazar?
Yes, on schedule, the session should start at 3:30, but we can take 5-10 minutes extension.
Okay.
Then we can move to the other, because we need to stop this and move to the other one.
Yeah, thank you. So in the interest
It's
of
not
time,
at 3:35, by the way.
yeah, thank you. Roland and Tarek, as two remaining panel members, if you can keep it short, please, but I would like to give both of you an opportunity. Roland?
Yeah, thank you, Anton. Well, thank you for inviting us. In fact, Anton, you gave us a very interesting presentation where you showed some future developments that already started. And in fact, your main point is that this should have consequences for the way we define MOT, our field of working, our discipline. And I think this is a very good point. Now, what I would like to plea for is to look at MOT as a multi-level issue. And I'm going to explain that. First of all, if you see that our field of analysis, what we look at is broadening out. We moved from the firm level to the ecosystem and society level. Now, if you remember the word that David just used, it was societal ecosystem. That's sort of illustrating that move where we broaden out our field that we study and that we work in. At the same time, we're deepening down into the body and the brain of the individual. And if Gita is then saying, okay, we should be more human-centered than we were before and in new ways, in fact, this is a way to see that. So what we're doing is we're broadening out, we're deepening down, and we already before that had a problem with the focus of the field that we're working in. So this is going to force us to take stands. And Anton was giving a plea to take time into consideration. That means, by the way, as a scientist, that all of my models should become dynamic, which they are not because they're all static. Interesting. I'm going to plea to look at the MOT as a multi-level issue. Now, you can look at MOT on the individual level. How do individuals behave differently? You can look at the project level. You can look at the firm level. You can look at the ecosystem level, or you can look at society. And in science, we usually have one level of analysis that we focus on. All our models are on one level. Psychologists look at the individual, sociologists look at society and groups. So are we going to go to a higher level, or are we going to choose to make MOT a multi-level issue? And if we would do that, it would be new for science and new for practice. And then it means that we should also not only change our definition, but change also the way we organize conferences. Because if we're going to be multi-level, any presentation, for example, on project management methods, should then include an analysis what it means for the individual, plus at the same time for the organization of the entire firm and the ecosystem in which the firm resides. And that means that if we adopt a different definition of MOT, which I'm very much in favor of, and then at the same time, we should change our way of working. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And in addition to adding the element of time, I would then plead to consider also the dimension of the level of analysis. And my proposal will be to look multi-level. Thank you, Anton.
Thank you very much, Roland. Tarek, can we go over to you?
Thank you, Anton. This is a discussion that requires not an hour of presentation. This requires few days of discussion. I think you raised some very important issues. I had a whole bunch of things that I was going to talk, but in the sake of time, I'm going to try to reduce them as much as possible. We have another chance tomorrow in a session that Nizar and I put on the future of MOT, that we might be able to spend more time even on smaller groups, that we can actually discuss this and come back with some suggestions or recommendations that we can talk about. But certainly, what I would like to see is probably a simpler definition that people can understand. I still have a problem with people understanding what technology is, and understanding that technology is the means by which we accomplish objectives for the betterment of human lives at all levels, at multi-levels and so on. Certainly the issue of human-centered design is even more pressing right now, and we can see it after COVID-19, because we have a number of issues in here we are trying to deal with. We are talking about in the post-digital, as you have defined it, even though the post-digital is not giving it. I agree with David, maybe some people can misunderstand it, but here we are talking about having to deal with the young and old, with illiterates and PhD, with Asians, blacks and whites, and men and women, and have all things, and we having to deal in a completely digital world. Yet the human being is indeed a social being, and the lack of connectivity and particularly the issues of access and equality in technology is important. What I'd like to see in our definition, the difference of the, you know, I've been into this definition even before the definition that you have mentioned about the Department of Commerce and so on. And I agree with everybody that we have moved past the firm. So we're going to have to do into the multi-level thing to a great extent. What we need to add is we have changed the world from Einstein physical world of mass and energy, and we have added information. So now we are talking about mass, energy, and information in the world, and you have added this concept of time, which is absolutely needed in there. Now you pose some questions just so we don't spend a lot of time. You said, is the existing definition of MOT is still valid? The answer, yes, but we may need to tweak it. We may need to emphasize certain things, as we mentioned, particularly that it was not taking into account enough digitalization. Digital is becoming the future, so we have to deal with that somehow. Who should do it? I think the MOT community should do it. IAMOT should take the lead on that. So I think we should be very well prepared to think more deeply and take some time and come up with a definition that people would understand. The problem is people until today don't understand what technology is, what it can do, and what its total ramification for the way we live and the way we conduct business and everything else. So I don't want to go over too much details. Maybe we can do that into some sessions, smaller sessions that we can really brainstorm.
Thank you very much for that, Tarek. I don't see any open questions. There's one that just came through from Anan Al-Ghazari that says, I think there is a need to create a framework to deal with MOT according to the different cultures. And I think the different cultures also relate to what David had to say about different countries. And it's not only the culture, it's also the readiness of a country for accepting these new moves. Because cultural readiness is something, institutional readiness is another thing, mental readiness in terms of changing your own way of life is another thing that will influence this. Thank you very much for that. What I want to suggest is that we now finalize this session. We're running into time problems. Those of you that still have questions, those of you that have ideas or suggestions or want to volunteer to assist us in this kind of thinking, should just send an email to the IAMOT organizers, refer to this session, and we can then either respond to your email or we can then have another session, even if we have to have a separate Zoom session a few weeks from now to address this point further. Thank you very much for your interest. There's 41, there was 45 attendees and the panelists. Thank you very much to each and every one of the panelists for your ideas. I'm sorry that we had to rush it a bit, but it has enriched a lot of what I was thinking. And thank you again for the organizers to allow me to start this debate in a forum like this. I appreciate all of this. I'm handing back to you, Nizar, in terms of the formalities.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, our distinguished panelists for the session of today. As Dr. Tariq just mentioned, that we have a session on Thursday. It could be much longer. It's all about the future of IAMOT and IAMOT as well. So it is a workshop style, so we can join and we can work on that in smaller working groups. So we will feedback Anton with this, and I think it's crucial nowadays to run. So thank you very much for all our panelists. Now it's time to take the group photo and then handle the certificates. So kindly just have a smile, and then I will take like one shot. Okay. David, okay, thank you. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much. Hidi, floor is yours. You'd like to handle the certificates?
Okay, Professor Anton, thank you.
I'd like to thank Dr. Anton Bota and Dr. Tariq Khalil and Dr. David for the great contribution, as well as Dr. Roland for his insights, and of course the nice presentation coming from Dr. Gita in terms of the redefinition of management of technology with the post-digital world. Thank you very much. I will be ending this webinar right now and joining the next webinar with Professor Osman Ahmed about the future of digitalization. So we will start in 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you, and let's switch to the other webinar right now. Thank you very much.